You know what? Some of you are just very stupid. I'm really sorry. Some of you are stupid. What? Okay, I'm going to come out and say it. This is a shit interview. Millennium interview with Anne Stickney, absolute fucking legend, and Catherine Bankson, absolute fucking legend. This is going to be a very good interview. I'm looking forward to this. Narrative and lore questions in patch 10.2. Now look, I'm going to admit a bias here. I haven't read this interview, but I have, like I say, I am familiar with the work of Anne Stickney and Catherine Bankson. Yes. And I like them very much. And I have read comments being critical of this interview. And I have to admit that when I read the comments from some pretty preeminent like voices in the WoW community, when I read those critical comments of said interview, I have to admit I did this. Nothing more, nothing less. But the comments, the critical comments of interview made me go like this. You know what I mean? So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to reading it. And read it, we shall. You know it. You better believe it. Here we go. Millennium interview with Anne Stickney and Catherine Bankson. Narrative and lore questions in patch 10.2. Boom. Looking forward to Dragonflight, patch 10. Let's just read the interview. Sorry, Wowhead, but we're going to... Oh, it's in French. Wait. Fuck you guys. This shit is in French. Now, you're going to say that I did not prepare or do this. I did not prepare for this section properly. And you'd be absolutely right, because I did not know this interview was in fucking French. Although, actually, yes, c'est la vie. I guess we will have to read the Wowhead interview part then. How did Alexstrasza figure out Fyrakk was coming for Imidrisil? Is that a joke? Wait, are all the questions going to be like this? Do they not get cinematics in France? Seriously, you know how like loot boxes are illegal in some parts of the world? And so like in Belgium, you know, Overwatch just doesn't have loot boxes, right? Or whatever. Do they just not get cinematics in France? Are they illegal? Are you not allowed to have any cinema in France if it doesn't feature old men smoking and like young women with their tits out? Is that the law? Do they look at WoW cinematics and go, there's no young ladies with their tits out. This is illegal. Would that be it? Is that what's going on there? I mean, that question was answered pretty easily in the cinematic, right? Shall I answer this question? We don't need... Look, I am keen to read their answer to this, but I mean, I saw it. I saw the cinematic go, Fyrakk will strike where we're weakest. And everyone instantly knew that meant Imidrisil, because that's where they're weakest. It's like the end of the question. Cancel this fucking interview. I'm going to need some music for this. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to get some fucking music. If it's all like this, I'm going to need some fucking music. I'm really sorry. Fine. What the fuck? Oh, Anne Stickney. There is a cutscene that plays at the end of the dungeon. Yeah, no shit. Yeah, no fucking shit. During which Nozdormu talks to Alexstrasza, and Nozdormu mentions that he only sees fiery clouds. After that, Alexstrasza simply matched the elements she has in her possession and supposes that the flames can only be those of Fyrakk, and that he would undoubtedly seek to attack the tree. This is why she believes that we need to talk to Marithra soon, because if Nozdormu can see him, then this is something we need. Now, I'll admit, that's quite a confusing answer. I'll admit, that's quite a confusing answer. Okay. I feel like my answer explained it better. Yeah, all right. But anyway, doesn't matter. Bringing new customizations for playable races is a great addition to Dragonflight. However, this seems to bring a lot of errors to the NPCs in games. For example, I have already seen many Blood Elf guards with blue eyes. Do you manage the implementation of NPC custom? What's wrong with Blood Elf guards having blue eyes? What the fuck's wrong with that? Can someone explain to me why Blood Elf guards having blue eyes is bad? Like, it's a customization option for Blood Elves. What? Why is that bad? Okay, I don't know who's... I'm really sorry, French people, but these questions suck so far. Okay, NPCs that had gold eyes have blue eyes, like named NPCs. Okay. Is it important? Are they famous for having gold eyes? If the story is in Burning Crusade, Blood Elf guards with blue eyes don't make sense. Right, okay, I hear you. So, in the event that you are doing Chromie Time Wrath, and I'm not even being funny here, and you're in Outland or whatever, and there might be guards there that have blue eyes or gold eyes, and that does technically going against the thing. Yeah. Okay, that's fair. That's like genuinely fair. Maybe they should have clarified that bit in the question. That is totally fair. Now, on the scale of things that I care about, down to the scale of things that I don't give a fuck about, that's pretty low. It's pretty low on the list of things that I give a shit about. But valid question. Blood elves can have blue eyes now. It's not just a customization available to players. Time has passed since the game's debut. Some blood elves have golden eyes now, while others have returned to their original blue color. The fact that such guards exist is not only related to the customizations available to players, but also, and above all, to the fact that time has passed since the Blood Elves found themselves infused with Fel. Yeah, obviously. Now, here's the thing, right? I don't think there's a single follow-up question in any of these questions. Is that true? Because if that is what the person meant, that's where you give a little follow-up question and you go, oh no, I actually meant it specifically in this kind of example, this kind of circumstance. Because at the moment, Catherine Bankson just made this dude look like an absolute fucking bellend. If this was a Ben Shapiro video, like Catherine Bankson just fucking owned this French dude with facts and logic. Catherine Bankson just ripped this guy a new fucking asshole with her facts and logic. It's like, I have noticed that since you have introduced blue eye colors to the blood elves, some blood elves in the game, they have blue eyes. It's like, yeah, they have blue eyes now, bitch. Please don't Google Bellend. Don't do that. No reason to do that. Please. Oh God, no. Please don't. No. Yeah, exactly, man. If I was given an interview with like one of the lead quest designers, I would definitely ask about fucking why some NPCs have blue eyes now. I feel that's something lost in translation with this interview. Well, actually, you know what? You're not wrong, because this interview would have been given in English and then translated into French, and then that French translation of the interview would have been translated back into English for this. So this has gone through 2 translations, which you should always be wary about as well. Something that I did actually think about in terms of like the criticisms that have come this interview's way. Yeah, definitely, possibly something lost in translation, yeah. In that sense, I think if we place a Minari Paladin in the World of Warcraft, then it will be a deliberate choice. Yeah. And then, after all, who says that Minari can't defend the light? I think this would be a very interesting character. If we were to add such a character into the game, it would not be a narrative error. It would be a deliberate choice on the part, answering a question that was not asked there, but yeah, go for it. Anne Stickney, in Legion, there was, for example, a Nathrazim, Lothraxian, who chose to join the Army of Light. There are therefore indeed characters Fel or infused by Fel who change sides over the course of their lives, so it would be truly a deliberate choice. Yes. Oh, sorry, that's referring to this last bit of the question, which I did not read. Can we fear that Minari Paladins will one day be visible by mistake, for example? Okay, I have a comment on this, but I'm going to wait for a question that I know is coming. Evolving the narrative arc from Cataclysm to Dragonflight. Now, potential for rate. That is a good headline. I'm expecting a good question. Patch 10.2 clearly echoes patch 4.2 of Cataclysm. Tindral replaces Fendral as leader of the Druids of the Flame, for example. Where do you want to go with such a creative process for this story? Do you think Legacy is about reproducing the past? I'm gonna put that incredibly passive-aggressive phrasing down to translation. Although it is translated from French, who are all passive-aggressive assholes. No, I'm joking. French people, I love you. You're the best. All I'm saying is, I used to work at the Natural History Museum, right? And occasionally I would get called to the Great Hall in the Natural History Museum because a bunch of school kids, like literal teenagers, would be sitting in the hall, blocking everyone's access into the main hall. Sometimes they would be smoking. And whenever I was told there was a big group of school kids sitting down being absolute fucking arseholes in the Great Hall of the Natural History Museum, my first response was always, French kids, right? And the response to that question was always, yep. Always the fucking French kids giving me grief. Okay, do you think legacy is about reproducing the past? A very awkward phrasing. I'm gonna give the interviewer the benefit of the doubt and put it down to a translation issue. That one. What would be a better way of phrasing that? Someone put this into a proper interview phrasing. What would that be that isn't passive aggressive? Like, do you enjoy referencing past events in current storylines, sort of, and mirroring them and things like that, I guess? Do you think appreciating the past of WoW is about reproducing it? No, because that feels passive aggressive as well. Because basically what you're saying in that question is, do you think just reproducing it is good? Because I think currently you are just reproducing past storylines. Do you think that's good? That's how it feels. I guess. Is the referencing of past events purposeful for like added meaning and things like that? Is like, I guess, how I would. I'd put it for sure. Paying homage, blah blah blah. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's necessarily about reproducing the past. Okay, well, maybe it wasn't a translation issue then. Or just bringing a new perspective by evolving narrative arc. We defeated Fandral in Cataclysm, but we didn't truly sanitize the ranks of Druids of the Flame. They only sort of dispersed. Since then, so sanitize is definitely a translation. That's definitely not the word she used. Since then, they no longer really had anyone capable of listening to them. Fandral was obsessed with his quest for immortality, and for him, this could only be accomplished by taking the path of fire. After the burning of Teldrassil, many Kaldorei found themselves more willing to listen to what the Druids of the Flame had to say. And I think this is actually shown pretty clearly in the questing of 10.2 as well. For those of you who haven't done any yet, but the burning of Teldrassil is shown as a very definite tipping point for a lot of the new Druids of the Flame. Like, loads of them reference it throughout the questing. So I feel like this isn't something that Anne Stickney is telling us that isn't in the game. I feel like that is referenced in the game, and it's presented pretty clearly. The idea is therefore to move this story forward rather than reproduce the past. Since the Emergisil tree is present, it is a plot very largely focused on the Night Elves, and all this takes place in the Emerald Dream, which is a place very linked to the Druids. So it makes sense. Yeah, I feel like there was the seed of a good question there. But that wasn't it, I feel like there was the seed of a really good question there, but it didn't quite work out, did it? I have the feeling that there are serious context issues in the initiation of certain expansions. I feel like this whole interview is a bit passive aggressive. I feel like the whole interview is just a teeny tiny bit. I don't know. Whatever, man. Like I say, I think there are good ways of asking these questions, and I think there are bad ways of asking these questions. I feel like a good way of asking these questions, I feel like if you can do this in interviews, and I've done it myself, but the first question always has to be nice, and then you follow up. So what you do is you go. Patch 10.2 is very evocative of 4.2 with the Druids of the Flames and stuff. Was that a purpose kind of callback? And then, Anne Stickney's like, oh, well, I mean, yeah, we're continuing their story. And then you follow up with, what about criticisms that you're kind of just reproducing old storylines? What would you say to that? You don't even present it as your criticism. You say, people are saying, right? And that's why I think follow-up questions are so important, Which is why, like, when I did that Twitter Spaces with Danusa and Hazzikostas, pretty much every follow-up I had was like, and how account-wide is that going to be? Like, I didn't just ask, is everything going to be account-wide? When they were talking about features, I was like, what about account-wideness of that? How is that going to work for, Because the last thing you want to do is make your interviewee defensive, unless you want, like, some kind of scandal or something, right? The questions all seem to start from the premise that the story content is bad. Yeah, honestly, that's how it feels, yeah. And that can work. But you do really need follow-up questions for that to work, I think. I don't know. You need to pin them down. If you do want to kind of hold their feet to the fire and give them uncomfortable questions, that's valid. That's perfectly valid if that's how you feel. But it does need follow-up questions. And I don't think this interview was conducted over email or something. It doesn't feel like it was. So I don't know. I feel like maybe that's a wasted opportunity there. Anyway, sorry. For example, the context of the awakening of the Dragon Islands is non-existent in-game, even though Steve Danusa revealed it to me during a previous interview. Is this a voluntary narrative process? Is it non-existent? Is it non-existent? I mean, it's not super nailed down. I'll certainly give it that, but I disagree it's non-existent. Like they say in the cinematics, I know that this is in my head because Nobbel was talking about it recently. Makes me think maybe some of these questions indirectly came from Nobbel, actually. But kind of true. No. Non-existent can't be kind of true. Okay? This is. I don't want to be a twat here, right? But something is either non-existent or it's not. There's no scale of non-existent. Non-existent is a binary. Either something is non-existent or it's not. And, it's like, I don't think it's super nailed down. You think it's true, though? Okay, well, Azikyle, I'm going to blow your fucking mind and your mum. In the cinematic, literally the cinematic for Dragonflight, the cinematic trailer for the famous video game World of Warcraft Dragonflight, it says, "You will know our return by the waking of the land." And we know that the dragons were looking for the Dragon Isles, okay? So here's the situation. We know that the dragons were looking for the Dragon Isles because they see it as part of the process of getting their powers back, their aspect powers back, and they feel like it is time, okay? So we know they're looking for the Dragon Isles. We know they basically know where it is. They know, like, where in the world it is. It hasn't moved. It's just shrouded from them. They can't see it while the machinery is off. Okay? So they're looking for it. And we know that as soon as the machinery is turned on, like seconds later, they're there. So it's not like they're on the other side of the world or whatever. They are looking for the Dragon Isles, and they are obviously close to it at that point because the Dragon Isles starts to wake up, just like they said it would. You will know our return by the waking of the land. So that's how Stony Tony knows that the dragons are close and looking for the island, and so that they don't, and that's why he knows he has to put on the beacon so that they can see it again. Does that explain your problem? Would you agree still that it's non-existent, the context, even though they literally just tell you? I agree it's not like super nailed down. Anyway, I'll read their answer as well. I think we showed the awakening of the islands. You even played through it during the Dragonflight pre-patch. We revealed the intro cinematic for Dragonflight, which represents the moment in which the islands awaken, but it wasn't a brief moment after which it stopped. The islands continue to awaken as players set foot on them. The entire world continued to awaken even as we walked these lands. So showing that was happening was a deliberate process. Yeah, that's a good answer from Catherine Bankson, but I don't think it's quite answering the thing that is being asked. I feel like I answered the thing that was being asked. I think either Anne and Catherine are unaware of how little this person likes the story and the implied criticism behind the questions, which is why I think you should just be more open about it, you know? So they're either not picking up on that or they're choosing to ignore it. And the result is they're not quite answering the thing that's being asked, which is a shame because those questions have, like, good answers and like obvious answers as well. Look, I'm not being funny here. We're dealing with an interviewer whose first question was like, how did they know that Thrak was going to attack Amir Jasil? Like, this is the level of comprehension of the narrative that this interviewer has. This interviewer sat there and watched the cinematic where they explained in like a couple of seconds why they knew that he was going to attack the tree, and that was apparently important enough to ask as their first question. Like, this is the level of comprehension of the story that we're dealing with here. No offense. Anne says, the introductory cinematic of the expansion, the one with Karanos Stony Tony, as the community calls him, yeah, community, presented the latter in sleep, presented the latter in C, translation. Before we see a temporal transition revealing to us the years had passed and the islands woke after a long, long time after the cutscene started. This is a sort of prologue to a story, and we didn't want to reveal all of the details about it in a prologue. Yet, obviously, the goal was just to set the scene before letting the story be gradually revealed, and I think we were quite effective with that in Dragonflight. I mean, yeah, I just think that, you know, when Nobble said on Twitter, like, was the reason that the islands ever woke up really explained? I had to think about it. Like, I had to actually stop and go, oh, was it? But the answer is yes. even in the cinematic, it's like explained perfectly adequately, you know? Literally one of the first lines in that cinematic is, you will know our return by the waking of the land, or something. I might be paraphrasing it. And yo, the land starts waking up because it turns out the dragons have returned. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dick here. It really is that simple. Am I being a dick? Am I missing something? Am I being incredibly stupid here? Because tell me if I am, right? Because I don't want to like dismiss concerns and stuff but for me, it's just very obvious. But didn't they return because the land awakened? No. The land awakened because they returned, just like they said it would. I guess people want to know why they went back, because it's their home. Wait, so the land wakes up because the dragons are trying to find the Isles. The land wakes up because the dragons are like basically on top. They can't see it. Okay, so the thing that they say before you will know our return by the waking of the land is, we're going to hide the land. It will be hidden from everyone, including us. Like, they literally say that. I mean, oh, fuck it. Okay. Okay, fine. I'm going to put on the fucking cinematic. I feel it's going to be easier if I just put on the fucking cinematic at this stage. Let's go.
The world has been sundered. It cries out in pain. We must go to its aid. We entrust our ancestral home to you, the Watchers. Let the land slumber, hidden even from our own eyes.
Hidden even from our own eyes. Now think about that for a second, okay? It means they can't see the Isles. However, they know where they are, okay? So, like, they still know where they are. If I was leaving my house in the morning and I was like, I am now going to hide my house even from me, and I won't be able to see it to go back into until someone inside activates the beacon. Like, I can go away to the shops, but I know basically where my house is. I might not be able to see it. I might not be able to go into it, but I can walk back to where I know the general vicinity of my house is. You know? Like, that's not hard. And when I get close, I hope that someone near me notices and turns on the beacon so I can actually go in. Isn't that how everyone's house works? Why do they hide it from why do they have to hide it from the dragons? Because that's just how it worked, man. It hides it from everyone. That's how the beacon works. A wizard said so, okay? I wonder why they didn't return home earlier then. I just feel like they didn't feel the time was right. Who knows? Reading is boring, gotta go watch Nobble. But Nobble didn't understand this either, though. No offense. Like, I'm not putting words in his mouth there. In his own words, he didn't understand why the Isles woke up. So I'm explaining it to everyone here, right? I'm not saying you have to like it. I'm not saying you have to think it's good, but it is there.
You will feel our return in the waking of the land.
Okay, so that's 2 lines that literally explain the question. You will feel our return in the waking of the land. So the land will wake up when they return. This is so, I mean, I'm not being stupid, am I? It's like literally there. They're just saying it. It's not circular. No, it's not circular. It's not circular. It's like they will go back and the land will wake up. It's like if it was circular, it would be, and also they will go back if the land works out. But no, that's not what they're saying. They will return when the land wakes up because they returned. What the fuck? Using that logic, everything is circular. Like, my hair got wet because I went in the shower. Also, I went in the shower because no, that's not what it means. You saying that the waking of the land was initiated by their return? They are saying that the waking of the land was initiated by their return. They are. I'm not saying anything. I'm merely pointing out that they say it in this cinematic fucking trailer to the entire thing. No, not everything is circular by that logic. Oh my god. No, I'm putting you on mute. You're very fucking annoying. Shut the fuck up, dude. I'm not letting you troll me out of this analysis. Go away.
Then, you must light the beacon of Tearhold, lest the path home be lost to us.
So the land wakes up, and the Watchers know they returned because of the land waking up, and they can light the beacon for them to get in. Yeah, because they've woken up. The Watchers themselves have woken up because they are part of the land. So they know when they wake up, the dragons are trying to get in. It's like someone knocking on the door, right? But they know the dragons can't get in if they don't light the beacon. And Stony Tony's problem is that, it wouldn't usually be his job. Usually, all the Watchers would wake up, and that big Watcher in the throne would be like, fuck, the dragons are back, nice one, and put the beacon on for them. The problem is, the dragons have been away for so long, 10,000 years, for some fucking reason, that, and there's a good question, but that's not the question that's being asked. He's the only Watcher left capable, he's the one that has to go and turn it on, even though it's not his job. And that's the drama of the cinematic, right? We will return when the land awakes. No, it's not we will return when the land awakes. It's you'll know we're back because the land will wake up. You will know we're back because we'll ring the doorbell. Not we will come back when we hear the doorbell. You will know we're back because you'll hear the fucking doorbell. How did the islands awaken? The dragon's coming back. Oh my fucking god. Okay, you know what? You know what? Some of you are just very stupid. I'm really sorry. Some of you are stupid. What I love about this chat and what I love about World of Warcraft is that, people from all different backgrounds and everything, come together to play this game. And, all human life is here. And I think that's brilliant. And I wouldn't change it. But unfortunately, what that means is some of you are stupid. Sorry. That's what I want to know. Why did they decide now is the time to come back? That's not actually what I want to know, although I would like to know that. My main question, because I think there are good questions to ask about this. The question to ask is, why did the island start waking up? Because that is answered in the fucking cinematic. That's a stupid fucking question that shows you don't understand words, okay? That's a stupid question. I've got a really good question. When the islands were sleeping, it's definitely implied that everything on the islands is sleeping, but we know that not everything was. We know that the Dragonkin have been awake for a very long time because they've been away for ages. We know that the Tuskar have lived and evolved over that time. We know that the Centaurs lived and evolved over that time. Please explain that, would be my question. Did they just live in darkness? That's a good fucking question, not why did the island start waking up? That's a bad question because it's answered in the cinematic. No one mentions, we've lived in darkness for the last 10,000 years. It sucks. No one's like, what the fuck is the sky? That's something I'd like to know the answer of, and maybe that's answered in the text and I just haven't picked up on it. That'd be nice. I'd like to know that, please. Maybe sleeping is just a metaphor of dragon society, not literally sleeping. Well, that's what is evidenced by the fact that all of these races on the Isles have a history that has been happening, right? But this cinematic makes it look all dark and dead. So, I don't know. I would like that to be explained. Yeah. Maybe it was just cloudy. Yeah. And that's all I'd need Danusa to say. It'd be like, yeah, we exaggerated that a little bit for the cinematic because it's cooler. But yeah, life was still happening there. Like, it's an easy answer to give. You just want to hear someone say it. Yeah. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. It's perfectly legitimate to we see, all in all, approximately 5 seconds of what the Dragon Isles supposedly looked at like when the dragons left. You know? Like, they were like, yeah, for those 5 seconds, it did look pretty grey and cloudy. Yeah. But the rest of the time, it was just kind of normal, really, for the people inside. Yeah, exactly. You know, and you're allowed to do that in a cinematic. You are allowed to be a little bit kind of representative and metaphorical in a cinematic. I think that's absolutely fine. Legit new flowers were blooming in the cinematic, though, right? Yeah, new flowers, like you say. New flowers. Doesn't mean that there were none there anyway. So I don't know, man. Yeah. And well, this is not the Waking Shores. This is the Azure Span. But yeah. The dragons decided to come home as they were wandering around within the vicinity of the island, felt their presence, and as it started to awaken, react to their presence, the Watchers started to wake as well, knew they were coming. Yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't think they decided to come home just because they were in the area. I think they were making an effort to come home. Yeah. And then when they got into the general vicinity, their presence, as promised in the cinematic, woke up the island. While the Dragon Isles were not there on the map, was it just shrouded in fog? Yes, 100%. No one could see it. It was shrouded in magic, which is fine. There's a precedent for that in the game. Yeah, it makes... Look, I admit, when Nobble asked that on Twitter, I had to think about it. I thought that it had been answered, so I went back and I rewatched the cinematic, and I was like, oh yeah, first fucking lines. My only curiosity is what made them decide to go home versus other times. Yeah, perfectly reasonable question. But that's not the question that was asked. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I agree. The Primalists came out of nowhere with the Dragonflight pre-patch without any context in order to free the big bads. They are now replaced by the Druids of the Flame with the same problems. Why not consider them as simple Primalists? Okay, I'm gonna give a response to this question before I read the answer, which I'm sure is fine. Yeah, why not just make the Druids of the Flame Primalists? Pretty simple fucking answer. They're not. Pretty simple fucking answer. They're not Primalists. Something I will say is that it's really nice the amount of Primalists that you see. I'm addressing the second part of the question first here, but you see loads of Primalists in the Emerald Dream, and most of them are kind of having doubts, and they're like, "Wow, we've been getting our ass handed to us all expansion. Loads of them, you get to be on your side." Like, it's actually really nice. I really like the way that they deal with the Primalists in 10.2. It's really good. I mean, obviously, you're just going to have to take my word for it if you haven't played the 10.2 stuff. But you encounter Primalists still working with Firak, and lots of them are like, fuck this shit. This is not what I fucking signed up for by this point, which I think is really cool and really good. Like, there's lots of internal conversations amongst the Primalists about what the fuck they're even doing at this stage, you know? And I think that's great. Now, the first half of the question is the important part, though. The Primalists came out of nowhere with the Dragonflight pre-patch. Yeah, that is largely true. That is largely true. And there hasn't been loads of context. You know, a lot of Primalists, if they are Elven, do seem to share that kind of common sort of motivating factor with some of the Druids of the Flame about being very bitter about Teldrassil, you know? Which I think's reasonable and interesting. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot of exploration into the Primalists. I think that is correct. I think that's true. And I think there probably could have been more. Primalists are mostly former Twilight's Hammer was stated in some pre-launch interview and hinted at in some quest. That's interesting. I've missed that completely. I must have read it if it was in an interview, but I have forgotten about it. I'm really interested to hear what they say about this. I spent the entire expansion. We've spent the see. Okay, so yeah, here's the thing, right? This is another reason why this is a bad question. Like, did you see what I did when I addressed that question there without even realizing I was doing it? I addressed the not important part of the question first. I addressed the bit about, like, why not just make the Druids of the Flame Primalists first? Like, that's a bullshit part of the question. That's a stupid part of the question, but it's the part of the question with the easier answer. Adding that, because I get the feeling this interviewer is a bit fucking angry with the story generally and a bit pissed off with the story. But by adding that second part of the question, they fucked their question, rightly or wrongly. Because it looks like Anne Stickney starts answering this second part first. And it's not important. It's not fucking important. Like, the important part of this question is the first part. The interesting part of this question is the first part, but it's also the hardest part to answer. So by adding this second part of the question, which is shit and stupid, it means that they're just going to fucking answer the second part of this question. This is a terrible question because of that. The first part of this question is fucking interesting. And I did it without even realizing it. I'm not even saying Anne Stickney is doing it on purpose, but I did it. When I addressed this question, I answered the second bit first. Because you do. It's a natural human thing to do. Oh, how annoying. We spent the entire expansion dealing with the Primalists. There aren't many left, although there are still some. But they're no longer the invasion force they were represented at the start of the expansion. On the other hand, the Druids of the Flame have a certain interest in what is at stake. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. They have their own goals and agenda, so to speak. They're working for and with Firak. This is an important distinction to make. It is above all a question. Yes! And she doesn't answer the first part of the question at all. Which I don't actually blame her for. I didn't at first either, without even realizing it. Yeah, because the first part is a bit of a statement, but that's so annoying. I would have liked to have heard an answer or response to the first part of this question. Legitimately, good question. Ruined by this pissy second bit of the question. And that's all it is. It's just being pissy. They asked a genuine question, and what they... I tell you where this comes from, right? I'll tell you where this second part of the question comes from. Why not consider them simple primalists? They are presenting their fix. They are presenting their fix in the question. They are almost answering their own fucking question. Like, they are saying, I don't like that the Druids of the Flame just aren't primalists. Why don't you just make them primalists? Which is a stupid... Yeah, it's dumb. It's dumb. And, like, it might make sense in your head when you've been dwelling on it silently for a long time. But yeah, they couldn't resist getting their own fix in there. And what it means is Anne Stickney just ignored the actual interesting, important part of the question. Oh, that's so annoying because I would have liked that. The first part is a good question, which I'd like to know an answer to. Hopefully, Catherine Bankson will answer. The other thing to point out is that the Emerald Dream is druidic realm. Therefore, Firak had to find... no, she's just answering the first part of the question as well. What ally is a better place to succeed in this task than druids? The power of the primalists are more shamanistic by nature. They could not have allowed him to enter the dream. The druids are... That's so annoying. I'm sorry if you think I'm coming down hard on this interviewer, but that actually just frustrates me a little bit. And you should have followed up to ask them to answer the first part of the question, which they didn't. They didn't do it. I don't think it's their fault that they didn't answer the first part of the question, but that is the important bit. That's the bit with an interesting answer. It's so annoying. There has been some criticism recently about the quests in Dragonflight, particularly about the quality of writing of some of the quests in the expansion, with many being considered too focused on humor and not enough on the evolution of the game. Yeah, do you remember that quest in Dragonflight, which was just a straight-up recreation of Indiana Jones, where you had, like, German Nazi goblins and stuff? Oh, no, wait, hang on. I think there's been, like, loads less dumb humor in Dragonflight than basically any other expansion. I mean, if I'm honest. Apart from maybe, like, BFA and Shadowlands. I think compared to BFA and Shadowlands, yeah, there's a lot more humor in it. But it's very gentle. It's not like pop culture references so much. Yeah, I think there's been a focus on smaller, more personal stories as side quests, and I think that's really good. I disagree with the premise of this question, but for the sake of argument, let's say I agree with it. I'm interested in hearing their answer. In your opinion, hasn't the balance of this part of the narration been broken in favor of a little too much humor? Okay, I'm going to come out and say it. This is a shit interview. Sorry. Like, this interview's not good. These questions are dumb. Isn't it true? Is it true that the narrative of Dragonflight has been broken in favor of too much humor? Is that true? No, I'm sorry. Sorry, like a lawyer. Sorry. I understand about 13. I misread your question, sorry. But no, I imagining that someone asked that question. No, I don't think it is true. I don't think it has. Yeah, I just don't agree with the premise of the question. But yeah. But let's see the response. Let's do it. WoW has always had humor, even vanilla. Yeah, no shit. Even in vanilla. Humor and less serious quest lines are necessary because they offer a break, a way to breathe, and to settle down for a little while. A narrative that does not take the time to pause between all the serious intrigue. I would really love to know what they consider the bits that are too humorous in Dragonflight. Not so I could shit on their opinion, because I would genuinely, sincerely like to know what they consider the parts of humor that have broken the narration. Genuinely. Like, genuinely. Sorry. A narrative that does not take time to pause between all the serious intrigues that it involves can be felt as very, very stifling, not to mention the fact that if players are too regularly confronted with the same narrative process, they get used to it and eventually get bored. So if you are serious all the time, how do you tell your players that what is happening before their eyes is very, very serious? It is necessary to have a certain rhythm, allowing serious elements to be put in place and then offering a break before starting again. The offbeat quest sequences offer players a way to take a little break and contrast the narrative, and also just to experience like life in the new place where you are, right? People talk about there not being enough exploration in WoW, but you know, like smaller narratives, small kind of slice of life narratives are, you know, a form, you know, an important part of feeling like you're experiencing exploration in an MMO, right? You know, that is, and I think when you get loads, like, you do feel like you're exploring different cultures and different people and different lands in Dragonflight, which I really, really like. We have a lot of quests relating to the evolution of the narrative of the expansion, the campaigns in particular, which turn out to be rather serious. But even within these campaigns, we need to offer the moments of respite. Yeah, because at the end of the, I wonder if they say this about Final Fantasy XIV. I wonder if this interviewer is like, I really find like the narration, the very serious narration of Endwalker was really destroyed by a dumb scene where they all sat down and ate burgers. It's like, well, dude, I feel like that really added something to the feeling of like the team and the fact that they're friends and kind of, you know, showing that they're just real people and stuff like that. Yeah, well, you know, likewise in Heavensward, I really think that very tense narrative and that very tense like journey to the dragons was completely destroyed by everyone making fun of Alphinaud because he couldn't find firewood. Really, really destroyed it. You know, that humor getting in the way there. Yeah, I think with a lot of these questions, this interviewer just isn't really saying what they mean. What they mean is, I fucking hate this game. Like, what they mean is, I think you're doing a shit job. And they don't have the bollocks to just come out and say that, which would make a much more entertaining interview. But because of that, they're not actually asking the right things. In my opinion, that's just how it feels to me. That's just how I feel. And this has always been my biggest problem with people that kind of hate on the game, is I've always said this, and you can check all my cinematic analyses and follow-ups to my cinematic analysis and things like that. My problem is when you are caught up in your hatred of the game, what I always see is it makes you miss very obvious story beats. Like, for example, to use Nobble as an example, because we're going to look at his tweet in a little bit, it was when he started hating Shadowlands, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, by the way. No criticism for that. But that's when he started misunderstanding bits of the story as well, and missing things that were very clearly and obviously said in cinematics. Like, for example, you will know our return by the waking of the land. We've established that a lot of people missed that. One of the first things said in the cinematic trailer to the entire expansion for Dragonflight, right? Loads of people missed it. And I feel it can affect your kind of capacity to pick up on, I think, quite clear narrative cues. Circular logic, obviously, yeah. No, I don't think. So here's the thing. I don't think Nobble is overly negative. He's in a bad place with the game, or was during Shadowlands. And I think that in the case of Shadowlands made him miss some clear narrative beats. Now, to point out that someone has missed something is not the same as saying you should like it. Okay? Me pointing out that a question they're asking has an answer which is presented in the game is not me saying, therefore you should like it. It's me just saying, oh, they do actually they do actually deal with that. Because, you'd want to know, right? I would also like to add that it was a real joy working on Dragonflight for everyone who contributed to it. So you can really feel this very joyful approach. I would agree with that in everything that was created. Just like Mists, I always said that Mists of Pandaria felt like the expansion where everyone working on it, and I mean like everyone from asset designers to environmental artists to writers to like composers, like it just felt like Mists was the expansion where everyone was having the most fun who worked on it. And Dragonflight feels like that as well, honestly. So if anyone wanted to create a quest that was fun and even a little crazy, we just said, sure, go for it. And that's something that Anne Stickney has said before, and stuff I've got from the story team is that when the whole scandal stuff was happening, I reached out to some people that I trusted in Blizzard and on the WoW team in particular. And I was like, look, I'm not asking you to tell me anything because this is a really horrible thing, all this scandal stuff. But at the same time, I don't want to accidentally say something nice about someone who turns out to be a fucking scumbag. Right? So if you think, without having to really directly answer, if you think I should not say anything nice about Ian Hazzikostas and Steve Danusa going forward, please let me know. And to a person that I asked, they all replied like, no, those guys are fine. And that was really important. So I don't know, maybe that's changed since I asked the question. Maybe they've both been fucking horrible and touchy-feely and nasty, but I doubt it. But at the time that I asked that question, people were like, no, they're fine. And some other feedback that came to me about Steve at that time was that people on the story team felt like he was really open to them being able to go to him with ideas for quests and stuff. And he was like 9 times out of 10 would be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. Put it in. And he's really open and generous with allowing people and on the writing team to pursue their own kind of like little things that they want to do in side quests and stuff. And that was really heartening to hear as well. And that does seem to be like something that Anne Stickney is alluding to here. Any chance you think this might be a translation language barrier issue, considering it's in French gaming website being the interviewer? I think there's certain things I'd be very reticent to criticize turns of phrase here because these questions would have been asked in English and answered in English and then translated to French, and we are reading the translation of the French, which was already a translation from English. So it's a bit like kind of telephone here, right? So yeah, you got to bear that in mind, but I think you get the gist of stuff, right? And to talk about the Bronze Dragonflight, for example, you are often dealing with this slightly ambient madness with completely offbeat quest interactions. Yeah, oh, definitely. So the Bronze Dragonflight quests in 10.1 are fun and funny and outrageous and silly, but I don't think they feel like they're distracting. I feel like humor is going to come out of that kind of shit naturally because it's stupid, it's ridiculous, it's a silly premise, time travel, right? And I think they lean into that really well. And I would definitely not say, I think they're some of the best quests in the game. I don't think they detract from the seriousness of the issue at hand, right? It does feel a little bit, from this translation, it does feel a little bit like, not even a gotcha, just more like airing their grievances in a kind of passive aggressive kind of way is kind of how I feel. But that could be a translation issue for sure. I think that when we have in our hands something so fantastic and wonderful that time, it would be a shame not to exploit it in a light way without forgetting some more sincere and serious elements in order to allow the most important and heartbreaking elements to be highlighted in relation to the rest. Yeah, so I think I said I'd really like to know an example of what they consider something that was humorous, that broke the tension of the narrative. And I feel like these answers knocked it out of the park. I agree completely with these answers. And if they feel like this, I feel like a good follow-up would be to give an example of what they mean, and let them respond to that, but they didn't. So I don't know. Exploring Tyr's purpose in Dragonflight. Okay, this could be potentially an interesting question. We have a whole Dragonflight story arc aimed at resurrecting Tyr, so a flashback. While the theme of heritage is central to the expansion, what purpose should such a story bring? Good question. That's a good question. Credit where it's due. I like that question. That is a good question. I can't say too much about where this whole story is going, since, spoilers. Tyr his involvement with the Dragonflights has been a big thing since the flight's inception long ago. He helped out and created the Silver Hand. When I say good question, good in relation to the other questions. He has a certain relationship with dragons, and we had to talk about that if we chose to talk about the dragons. The aspects were infused in part thanks to Tyr. His influence is therefore present everywhere on the Dragon Isles. So why not bring him back? The use of the word islands there makes me feel like this was just put through a translator. If this was being translated by a human being, there's no way they'd have said islands. We all know that we're talking about the Dragon Isles. This is a literal Google Translate job, isn't it? I feel like even if I just put this through Google Translate, I would have thought to have changed that word. The translator might not know the context. Again, if that's the case, that would be very unfortunate. So why not bring him back? He is a Watcher, a creation of the Titans. If you can restart a Watcher, why not do it? Even more, if you can reboot a Watcher who was involved in what you are, why not do it? I have the feeling that the involvement of Viranoth and other characters similar could allow them to ask. Yeah, and again, this question does answer its own question. What purpose would such a story bring? Well, one of the central themes of Dragonflight is heritage. But you can't just answer. You can't just say, well, you just said it yourself. Yeah. A major theme of the expansion is heritage. So with that in mind, Tyr is an interesting kind of thing to look at, isn't it? Really? Next fucking question. Okay. Are you sitting down? Is everyone sitting down? Because this is the question that has caused the shit. Don't stand up, Tank and Funk, because you're about to get your feet knocked out from under you. I hope they're releasing a recording of this interview. Oh, what, in the original English? Yeah, that'd be interesting, actually. If you discovered what turned out to be a narrative error after the fact, how would you go about fixing it? Very vague question, but potentially a very interesting question. When we see this type of inconsistent element, we always wonder if it's a narrative error or an unreliable narrator. Many stories in WoW were written by the Titans, or from the perspective of the Titans, or those who have only heard one sound of the bell. What a lovely phrase. What's that phrase in French? That's obviously like a French kind of pronoun sort of thing. Adverb. That's obviously like a French adverb kind of thing, isn't it? That's like a little French saying. Only hearing one sound of the bell. That's really interesting. I love that phrase. Yeah, not pronouns, sorry. Le son de cloche. I wonder what she actually said. Because idiom. Okay, yeah, an idiom. Yeah, sure. Well, it's like every dog has its day. That's an adverb, right? Or what am I thinking of? Sorry, I've never been good with my actual terms for things. I'll go with idiom. Okay, idiom. Good stuff. Okay. Oh, proverb. Thank you, proverb. That's why I said pronoun at first. Proverb. Thank you. Yeah, I clearly I could tell what it meant even just by reading it here. But I wonder because there's no way that Catherine Bankson said those who have only heard one sound of the bell. She would have said something like, have only heard one side of the story, and the French translator turned it into the established French, and that is an established French idiom, is it? This isn't relevant at all, by the way. It's just really interesting to me. Is that an established French idiom, like only hearing one sound of the bell? My beautiful French-speaking peoples in chat? Yeah, so the French translation, that makes me think the French translation is quite a good translation. Is that, there's literally no way she said that in English. But they've, put it into... She said something like, I've only heard one side of the story, or, and they have they've used the established French idiom, which is completely different. And then, unfortunately, the translation from French to English is a soulless translation and has literally translated it. So it loses a lot. So that makes me think that the original interview in French, this is probably quite a good translation of the original English. That's what it means. Or it's at least a thoughtful translation. This is a very ironic thing to be talking about when we're talking about like what sources the lore comes from and how much you can trust it, by the way. Can I just point that out? This is a very ironic, like having a conversation about translations is actually a really fitting conversation to be having when we're talking about where the narrative of the story and of the world comes from and where we take it from and how much you can trust it or understand it. Very meta, yeah. But yeah, so I would guess that the French translation is probably quite good, and this translation is through Google Translate from the French. Okay, not that that's important, really. Recently, and as we evolve the world of Warcraft, we discover different points of view which contrast with what we've always been told. Is this an opportunity to show the world from a different perspective, or is it pure contradiction preventing us from doing anything with it altogether? So we evaluate based on this and seek the most suitable solution. These different perspectives sometimes allow us to create a more vibrant, more interesting world. So, the problem with this answer is that it's answering a different question. Because Catherine Bankson and Anne Stickney have hearts of gold and are lovely people, they do not understand that this interviewer is coming for them. Like, they do not understand that this interviewer is throwing stones at them. That said, this is an interesting question, but like that's quite an important part of understanding for where this question is coming from, because they don't just come out and say it. Isn't it sidestepping the question? Okay, so like, what do you think this question means? Yeah, he's basically asking, why do you retcon? But he's not asking that, because that's what he wants to ask. What he wants to ask is, why did you retcon a bunch of shit in Shadowlands? That's the question he wants to ask. Why did you retcon a whole bunch of shit in Shadowlands? That's what he means. I know that's what he means, because I know he's being passive-aggressive. But if you take the question just as it's asked, if you discovered what turned out to be a narrative error after the fact, how would you go about fixing it? So the thing about retcons is they're on purpose most of the time. Most of the time, retcons are on purpose. And Catherine Bankson is sitting there like, well, I know we've done retcons, but it's always been on purpose. It's always been like a recontextualization. Like, you know, but the way this question is phrased is, if I was reading this question and I was a quest designer, I'd be like, if you were looking at the lore and say you were doing dragons, right? You come back to dragons and you're like, well, I'm going to read everything about dragons before I write any quests, okay? And you find that even before you got there are two things that don't make sense together. How do you go about fixing it? So like, I'm writing some quests. I go back to the old dragon lore and I find two storylines that contradict each other, you know? And it's like, how do you go about fixing that? I go, well, I would take the view, because I don't want to like write one of them out. I'd take the view that they're written by two different people and they're different views and stuff like that. But that's not what this interviewer means. This interviewer is like, why did you do this? Why did you like retcon the shit? But that's not what the question is. A narrative error after the fact. So he needs to be clearer with the question for a start. But that's how I would have taken the question. Absolutely. So she doesn't answer the question that he means, but that's not completely her fault. Why did you alter the sacred timeline? Yeah. And the thing is, like, we need to know. So when someone tells me they're not transphobic, right? The first thing I always ask them is, what would you consider to be transphobic? Because me and this person probably have some very different fucking ideas on what, you know, actually constitutes transphobia. So if someone is like, you know, talking about trans rights, and I get the feeling they're not really in favor of trans people, and they tell me, I'm not transphobic, I'll always be like, okay, what would you consider transphobic? Like if someone's defending J.K. Rowling and says, J.K. Rowling's never said anything transphobic, I'd be like, can you give me an example of something you would consider transphobic? Because a lot of the time, these people don't even accept that trans people exist. They don't accept that being trans is a real thing. So to them, nothing is transphobic. Okay, I am going somewhere with this, I promise. To them, nothing is transphobic. So in their mind, yeah, you're right, J.K. Rowling hasn't said anything transphobic, because to them, nothing is transphobic, because trans people don't really exist. They're just like mentally ill or whatever, according to them. And, you know, I need to know in this context what this interviewer considers a retcon, because I can guarantee you, or a narrative error, okay? Yeah, so for example, Must Smell Her, person who has written 6 messages in my chat in their entire life and who followed today. Must Smell Her does not think anything is transphobic. You know, like Must Smell Her does not believe anything is transphobic because Must Smell Her doesn't think that trans people really exist. They don't consider it a valid fucking thing. And that's a great example of what I'm saying. And I need to know what this interviewer considers a narrative error, because I can guarantee you that some of the things, at least, that this interviewer considers to be a narrative error, Catherine Bankson considers to be a purposeful narrative choice. Do you get what I'm saying? So, for example, I bet you that this interviewer considers the Dreadlords working for Denathrius to be a serious, like, what turned out to be a narrative error. Whereas Catherine Bankson wouldn't. She'd be like, no, that was something we decided to kind of reveal that actually it was this. We decided that was it. That's not a serious narrative error, according to Catherine Bankson. That is evolving a story. Oh yeah, while I know you agree, it is worth clarifying that transphobes are just idiots. The interviewer here can just have a different opinion. Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. But I would really like an example of what he would consider a narrative error after the fact, because I think that would be quite illuminating here. Wow, because whether you think this is a decent answer or not will depend on that as well. The interview doesn't understand narrative terms and how they work. Dude, I just called like an idiom an adverb, like. I called a proverb an adverb. I don't know fucking words either. I can't talk. WoW is a living world. It's not static. Therefore, certain elements may sometimes have been perceived as errors, and we try to transform them into opportunities in order to create something coherent. That's a good answer. And it's also an answer which is quite similar to a Metzen answer, which people are using as a stick to beat these two with, which we'll look at in just a moment as well. As a narrative designer, I'm regularly in touch with my colleagues in Quest Design who pitch me their ideas. Sometimes they pitch me great things, but there's an element of the game's story that contradicts what they are proposing. So I explain to them that we will have to get around this problem, which often turns out to not even be that huge. How? Already, I don't see the narrative errors like real mistakes. Like Kathy said when talking about the different perspectives, who was the narrator, for example? Where did that piece of the story come that you think is a mistake? Is that something we can work around or incorporate into the story? Or is it really weird? And if it's so weird, do we really want to highlight that weirdness? Taking the ignoring it approach, like with Madan. I think it's a great thing to do. There are loads of ways to look at what you consider to be mistakes without necessarily seeing them as such. It's often more about opportunities to be seized than mistakes. Okay, I like that answer. I feel like you can sum it up, by saying it's not one person writing this story. It's loads of people writing this story. And there are lots of ways, and when it comes to inconsistencies and mistakes, there are lots of ways to look at what you consider to be mistakes without necessarily seeing them as such. It's often more about opportunities to be seized. And I think that's a good answer. Sorry. I don't see the problem with that. Personally. Oh, that's the last answer. Let's see what some of the comments here say. Is there a taxi that can get me to the end of this new law and back to where Chris is in charge? Oh, wow. People are... there are some heinous inconsistencies in Dragonflight's writing. I'm not saying this guy is wrong. What are the inconsistencies in Dragonflight's writing? Someone tell me some inconsistencies in... I'm not saying there aren't any. I just want to make very clear. I'm just asking as an example. And it seems like the devs aren't too keen on fixing them. It sort of feels like we're rushing this X-Pack in order to get to the next one. I mean, I'm not sure I agree with that, but... the whole Infinite Dragonflight getting along with the Bronzes arc... How's that an inconsistency? I'm so confused. That's a story happening. I feel like these motherfuckers, right? They'd be like, the problem with Christmas Carol is that it's so fucking inconsistent. Like, Scrooge is meant to be this fucking, like, miser who only cares about money and doesn't care about people. And then by the end... he does care about people, and he doesn't care about money. Like, what the fuck? Like, they clearly establish at the beginning of the story that he only likes money and doesn't care about people or love or anything like that. And then at the end of the story, he's all like, oh, I don't care about money. Oh, I love everyone. Like, what the fuck, man? How many people wrote that fucking story? And were they communicating with each other? How are they going to fix that? Legitimately. story, like the definition of a story is things happening and the situation that you start in changing. Like, I feel like a lot of people just want the WoW world to be like a museum that they walk around in. And the idea that anything would ever change or progress is anathema to them. You know, they just want their museum world to hang out in where they're comfortable and nothing will ever change. And unfortunately, that's not how time works. Like, I can understand not liking the changes, but that's different from what I see a lot of the time, which is people just being upset that change is even happening. I think my issue with Dragonflight story is Firak being the last boss of the expansion. Yeah, valid, but that's nothing to do with like the consistencies in the story, right? We're talking about like, you know, inconsistencies in the story and like what are there? What ones are there? Like legitimately. Imagine going to therapy IRL and playing Dragonflight to partake in more therapy. Oh my God, you guys suck. You guys fucking suck. Oh my fucking God, they did not actually say WoW is a living world, it's not static. WoW is the most static world I've ever seen. Zones are left to rot. Stories are barely fleshed out. Characters get put on the sidelines, ignored for years. The list goes on. So wait. Is your criticism... what's your criticism then? Calling out a lot of inconsistencies and things everyone has noticed is great. What inconsistencies got called out? The one, like, interesting thing that they brought up was, like, you know, what's the deal with the Primalists? Where did they really come from? That was it. Like, all the rest was just like, so I think your story's a bit shit. What are you going to say about that? Who are the Primalists is never answered. I agree that, you know, there's not been enough explanation on the Primalists. How did they learn about Razageth? I mean, so that's the same as the first question. Why now free the Primals? That's the same as the first question. Who leads the Primalists? That's the same as the first question. How did Firak even learn of the Druids of the Flame? I mean, that's explained in 10.2. But okay. Firak has been shown to hate morals and is a crazy from Shadowflame, yet has no problem organizing an army? What? Okay, sorry, Dylan. That's bullshit. Sorry. There's some heinous inconsistencies in Dragonflight's writing. What, though? And also, by the way, sorry, just to be a bit pedantic, I agree that the Primalists aren't, you know, explained well enough. But that's not an inconsistency. Like, an inconsistency would be one quest says that they came from here and another quest says that they came from here. And that hasn't happened. We've had not enough explanation of any sort, right? But just not explaining something is not an inconsistency, just to be very clear. And that's what I mean. Like, everyone's like, there's so many inconsistencies. For example, the Primalists, where do they come from? It's like, that's not an inconsistency, but go off, King. Oh my God, Big Bad Dad loved this comment. Big Bad Dad thought this comment was so funny, he put it twice. Oh no, I moved up a bit, sorry. They call the game's previous story, created by an earlier but very talented narrative team, as if written by the Titans. I think this is the key of it. I think this is the crux of all of it. A lot of people take the view, unfairly, I think, that any kind of progression of the story, of characters changing, anything like that, is basically the new narrative team, fucking nebulous term, shitting on the old narrative team, showing disrespect to the perfect work of the old team. And I think that's what that's what a lot of this sentiment really comes down to, is they think the new people are changing stuff and they don't like it. And they think the new people are sitting there laughing at the shit story of old WoW that they're changing, right? And that's what they really don't like. And there might be something in that, but we never get to that because some of these criticisms are so bad. They are hurting our childhood. That's what hurts people. Really? Are they hurting your childhood? Really? So here's the thing. I used to use that phrase. I used to use the phrase, "You're destroying my childhood." I think the last time I used it was when the Michael Bay Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie came out. I saw that movie and I saw that Michael Bay had made the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles aliens. And I said, "Fuck you, Michael Bay. You are destroying my childhood." And then I stopped being a fucking twat. And I realized Michael Bay wasn't ruining my childhood because all the things from my childhood still exist. I can go back and watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles anytime I want, the ones I like. And the fact that, you know, a movie came out where it was a bit different didn't actually ruin my childhood, actually. Me being shit with girls ruined my childhood. Me never having a decent haircut in my entire life ruined my childhood. Michael Bay didn't ruin my childhood. So I understand this sentiment, but it's wrong. It's wrong. Like, the WoW team are not ruining your childhood by progressing a story. Like, all the elements that you liked about the story, they're still there. It's fine. You know? Any joy you got from a story, even if it were to be retconned out of existence, you still got that joy from that story. No one's ruining your childhood. It's fine. And you could do yourself a favor. Not me. I don't give a fuck. Do yourself a favor by, you know, finding peace with that and realizing that your life will be better. Be like, no, actually, Christy Golden has not, Ian Hazacostas, Steve Denuza has not spoiled the enjoyment that I experienced of those things when I was younger and when I experienced them and I really liked them. No one's ruining my childhood at all, sorry. Let's just say these dev responses are very eye-opening as to what to expect in the future. I just feel like people are reading so much into this. I feel like their answers are fine. I just don't get it. But for an example, for a much better eloquated example of the problem people have with this answer, let's go and have a look at Nobble and him talking about this, because he's much more eloquent than these fucking idiot Wowhead posters, right? Did we forget what story we told before / make a mistake, or can we write it off as point of view storytelling? Heartbreak. Well, now we at least have confirmed why they decided to go with this. If there's one thing I hope they're going to change in the future, it's POV storytelling. So again, and like I don't follow Nobble really closely here, but can someone give me an example of what Nobble considers to be like a mistake from the point of view of storytelling? Like someone who I love Nobble. I think he's a beautiful human being. So I've got no beef with him. I'm trying to understand. There's a reference to the Titan books, Chronicle being a Titan point of view. No, okay, so, right, let me stop you there. That's not a mistake. That was a conscious change. That wasn't something they got wrong. They made the conscious effort to come out and say, actually, Chronicle is written by, from a kind of through a Titan lens, right? And okay, you might not like that, but it's not a mistake. They did that on purpose. Okay? That is not an inconsistency. They did that on purpose. You know, it's not something they did and then were like, oh shit, no, oh fuck, oh god, now what do we do? Like, they did that on purpose. So that's not a mistake. So, like, what is a mistake? Because this question, and the reason this is so confusing is this question, if you discovered what turned out to be a narrative error after the fact, how would you go about fixing it? I know that the interviewer means Chronicle. I know that Nobble means Chronicle. But that's not what the fucking question is. And you can't blame the writers for answering the fucking question that was asked them. They answer the question that they think is being asked, like, how would you fix a mistake? Them changing where Chronicle comes from, they did on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. Them changing the context of, like, who was really controlling Arthas or whatever, they did on purpose. It wasn't a mistake. So when someone asks them, how would you fix a mistake? They don't consider Chronicle, they don't consider Shadowlands to be what they mean. I know this guy means that. But they're answering the fucking question, like, correctly. Didn't they set up stuff from the Titan point of view so they had room to change things? Yeah, but they did it on purpose. They did it on purpose. It's not a mistake. Chronicle isn't a mistake. I can see what Ezekiel is saying too. Like, yeah, I can see what he's saying too, but it's not what he says. Like, he's asking, how would you fix a mistake? And that means a mistake like literally forgetting where the Draenei come from. Like, Chronicle is not a mistake to the writers. They did it on purpose, consciously. It's not an inconsistency to them. They did it on purpose. If he means retcons, say retcons. But that's not what he says. Sure, Noble is upset about the use of POV storytelling to change things that they don't want to keep true. Yeah, I get that. I get what... But he refers to it as a mistake, which it's not. It's a conscious narrative decision. I don't understand where this mistake thing is coming from. What's the mistake here? Explain to me as a killboy, since you're doing some dick riding here, what is the mistake that we're referring to here? Tell me, like, genuine question. What's the mistake? Help me understand, dude. It doesn't say just a mistake. If you discovered what turned out to be a narrative error after the fact, how would you go about fixing it? Did we forget that the story we told before make a mistake, or can we write it off? Yeah, I don't see what you're saying. It seems like when people say mistake, they really don't. They really mean law I don't like. I mean, yeah, honestly, we are talking about like the Silmarillion, in which calling it subjective telling and nothing in there could be true suddenly feels like betrayal. No one's saying nothing in there could be true, though. That's a ridiculous exaggeration. So, for example, there are loads of ways of interpreting things in the Silmarillion. It sums up whole lifetimes in like a sentence. You know, like if we're talking about mistakes in the Silmarillion, I'm sure you could find some where bits contradict, like you can certainly find contradictions in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, for example. Okay, things that you would describe as mistakes. But then the Silmarillion like kind of does what it can to kind of like fix those things, right? But those are mistakes. The Silmarillion is a conscious changing of those, of things to try and, you know, align the mistakes. So again, I'm just asking, what does Noble mean here? And I'm doing this so I can understand, okay? What does Noble mean when he says, make a mistake? What does he consider to be a narrative error? What is it? What does he consider that to be? Because that's important in this conversation. Like, what do you consider a mistake to be? I think I know, but the jailer is a narrative error. Well, exactly not. That's exactly the point. He's clearly not. Like, you know, it was a bad decision. Like, he was badly written. I wish he hadn't been, but he's not an inconsistency, is he? No one fucking go and ask Noble anything, okay? Leave that man alone. Jesus Christ, I'm just trying to have a conversation here. Are bad decisions mistakes? Not in the context of this question, no. If you discovered what turned out to be a narrative error after the fact, they mean inconsistencies. That's what the question is. You know, Medan was a mistake in the terms of like, it was a dumb fucking idea, but it wasn't a mistake in terms of like, it happened by accident, okay? The contradictions in Draenei lore, when Wrath came out, happened by accident. That's a mistake, okay? Medan was purposely written. The new writers have a far more open view to retconning things to create new directions with lore. So you mean like a mistake is a retcon? Okay, we've just got wildly different interpretations of what the word mistake means in this context then. So you're just saying you don't like retcons, which is fair enough, but a retcon is done on purpose. It's not a mistake. A retcon is a conscious changing of the old lore. It's not a mistake. They've sat down and they've decided to do it. Can you at least appreciate what I'm saying there? In my opinion, Noble is pointing out how they relied a bit too much on POV unreliable narrator storytelling recently. Yeah, that's what it seems like to me, but that has nothing to do with this question. I very much like POV storytelling, honestly. What were the Draenei story errors? Let's ask Chris Metz, because another comment that my attention has been drawn to on this issue, which I find really interesting, is Portergage. It's just crazy how different the mindsets are across the years. I've always admired Metzen to an insane degree for this post about the Draenei before TBC. Let's read this. People are using this as an example of how the new team, they just want to ignore mistakes, and they just want to paper over the cracks, and they'd never say sorry for anything. But, you know, Metzen straight up would apologize. Hi, guys. This came out after Wrath, and people started noticing that the lore in Wrath for Draenei didn't match up with pre-established lore. I wanted to drop you guys a line, explain what's up with some of the recent changes you've all been seeing in the lore, specifically address your concerns about Draenei and their revised backstory. Bear with me here. I tend to get a bit wordy as I build up steam. He's not lying. He does. Did I say Wrath? I meant TBC. Right, to be totally upfront with you guys, it's my bad, straight up. The obvious lore contradiction with Sargeras and his encounter with the Eredar was clearly documented in the Warcraft 3 manual. I wrote those bits about 4 years ago, and to be totally honest, I simply forgot. Genius, right? With my excitement to get the Draenei up to speed and root them more firmly in the setting, I forgot to do my homework and go back over my earlier writing. I can assure you no one's more crushed about this mistake than I am. I've spent the last few days kicking my own ass over this one. Sucks to fail. It may not always be evident, but we take the story stuff really seriously at Blizzard. It's been one of my personal missions at this company to maintain a high level of integrity through the Warcraft game setting, all of them actually, and I think we've done a pretty decent job of upholding the continuity over the years. I think it's important to note that world building is far bigger than just storytelling, and it requires, in my humble opinion, a certain amount of flexibility. Sometimes you need to expand certain ideas or retcon. Okay, I really want you to listen to this next bit. I really, really want you to listen to this next bit. This is being held up as why Chris is very different from the current story team. Please listen to this next bit. Sometimes you need to expand certain ideas or retcon whole sections of continuity to broaden the scope and accessibility of your setting. Since we're holding this up as the right way of doing things, if this is truly the correct way of doing things, let us never forget that sometimes you need to expand certain ideas or retcon whole sections of continuity to broaden the scope and accessibility of your setting. So retcons are okay then, right? I agree with this. I agree with everything in this post, by the way. Why are you making it black and white? I'm just reading his fucking words, bitch. Why are you crying? Why are you ignoring the bit that you don't like, that you don't agree with? Why are you like, yeah, this is how it's done, except for that sentence there. Ignore that. Ignore that sentence. No, shut up. Don't look at that. Shut the fuck up. Don't look at that sentence. Like, shut the fuck up. Everything else he's saying, fuck you. Stop retconning Chris Metzen's statement, dude. Oh no, Chris Metzen didn't really say that. No. Here's the thing, Taliesin. No, Chris Metzen didn't really say that. That statement was written by the Titans, and Chris Metzen said some of that statement, but he never said that bit. That's just something that they decided he said later on. Yeah. Dude, come on. You're like, Chris Metzen does it right. Shut up. Don't say the words he said. Don't fucking look at the things he's saying. Holy fuck. Look. Pretty much all of this is him apologizing for fucking up the law and being inconsistent. The one part of this statement, which is actually... No, I'm answering you here, Ezekiel, but I'm not strawmanning you. Listen to what I'm saying now. Shut the fuck up. Stop typing. Stop it stop it. Stop typing. Put your hands by your side. Listen to me. I'm going to help you out here. I'm about to explain it. Stop typing. Thank you. This entire post is apologizing for his big statement, his big mistake, okay? Which is perfectly fair, perfectly reasonable, the right thing to do, although people hated him for it at the time. There's very little of this statement which represents a philosophy, a view of how he thinks things should be done. But if we're talking about how Chris Metzen would do things, like that's important, right? This sentence, which I'm reading to you, which you don't like, is one of the few parts of this entire post which is actually a philosophy, which is actually a statement of how he believes things should be done. And it's very telling that that's the bit you don't agree with. That's the bit you're saying you don't like. That's the bit that you're saying I am strawmanning you by focusing on. The thing that he says should happen. And what he believes to be best practice, and how he believes a story should be written. The retcon itself is completely... Shadow Creed is right. The retcon itself is completely incomparable to what we're actually talking about with the new writers. But regardless, this is one of the few parts of this post where he's actually discussing the philosophy of how to write this story. So far from it being black and white and one little bit, it's arguably the most important bit, okay? Does that make sense? Can you appreciate what I'm saying there? Sometimes you need to expand certain ideas or retcon whole sections of continuity to broaden the scope and accessibility of your setting. Chris believes in recontextualizing things. He believes in a writer's right to retcon things and to change different like change the direction of things. That is what Chris Metzen believes. I rest my case.